Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Mogget from Train Signal, and we're about to begin the webinar. I'm just going to take a minute to tell you what you can expect in the next hour. First, I'd like to draw your attention to our question box in your webinar control panel. John will be answering questions today at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions during the presentation. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know in the questions box and we'll do our best to assist you and help you troubleshoot any issues you have. Today's presentation will be recorded and available to view on our blog. We'll email you the link after the presentation once the recording is finished. After you exit the webinar, you will be prompted to take a short survey. Train Signal wants to hear from you, so please take a few minutes to complete the survey. We'll also be choosing one participant from today's audience to receive a copy of Windows 7 Ultimate. To be eligible to win, you must complete the survey that you will receive after the webinar. So be sure to fill it out. It only takes a few seconds. If you have any additional comments or feedback, you can email us at webinars@trainsignal.com. And with that, thank you for joining us today. Here's John O'Neill Sr.
Well, hello everyone. This is John O'Neill Sr. and I'm pleased to be with you today so that we can take a glimpse into the magic that will be Windows 8 in all of its different forms. Well, a little about who I am. I am a chief technologist with AwesomeWildStuff.com or AWS Solutions. I'm obviously a speaker, educator. I'm also a consultant and author. In fact, as a Train Signal instructor, I'm currently developing an iPad in the Enterprise course that you can look for later this year. We're very excited about it. It will deal specifically with placing the iPad in your organizations and supporting them. So what do we do at AWS Solutions? Well, we do consulting and teaching for today's IT professionals. We provide out-of-the-box solutions, creative solutions to modern business issues. And the AwesomeWildStuff.com division is kind of a unique website where we offer cool and wildly unique products. Everything from custom-made video jukeboxes to laser-engraved rattles. If it's cool and unique, not something you'd find in the average store, we probably have it. So with that, let's get into Windows 8. Well, first off, Windows 8 will be an operating system like nothing you've experienced before. I will tell you that it is slated to hit stores October 26th. Microsoft has finally been kind enough to give us an actual launch day. Now, October is shaping up here to be a pretty amazing IT month, right? We're going to have Windows 8, we're going to have the Surface tablet, we're going to have Windows 8 phones. There's a lot of speculation that we'll see the iPhone 5 in that time frame. So it's going to be very interesting and very exciting. A lot of new technology hitting. As far as Windows 8 goes, it's very exciting to think about the fact that this operating system has more press, more buzz, and more conversations going on than any other OS out there, and it hasn't even been released yet. Well, why is this? Well, there's a number of reasons, but a big one is the fact that Windows 8 brings the first real effort, at least as far as I consider it, for Microsoft to penetrate the tablet marketplace. Okay, and to do that, they've started from the ground up. They've changed the interface, so we have the Metro interface coming and a number of other things. Now, I will take a minute to mention here that along with Windows 8, which is coming late this year, you should probably in the January timeframe of next year see Office 2013 hitting. And Office 2013 has been architected to really shine on the Windows 8 platform. So we're going to start by talking about Windows Server 8. And I want to mention to everybody right now that my goal here is to give you a glimpse into all the different flavors of Windows 8. So Windows Server, Windows 8, Desktop, Windows 8, for tablets, and we're even going to take a peek at the Microsoft Surface tablet. So stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to hit today. Now, I make the joke that it's Windows Server 8 because that's what it's been called for a long time until Microsoft officially changed the name to Windows Server 2012. And it is possibly the biggest OS shift in the server platform since Windows 2000. And many of you will recall how big of a change that was, right? When we went from NT4 into Windows 2000, that's where we met Active Directory for the first time, along with many, many, many other improvements. Well, Windows Server 2012 is set to be that kind of game changer. Excuse me. Now, most of the big improvements are under the hood, so they're not going to be staring you in the face when you first boot it, although there are some that will be noticeably different. Windows Server 2012 is a key part of Microsoft's private cloud strategy. Many of you may have heard Steve Ballmer famously say that, Microsoft is all in as far as the cloud goes. So they really are redesigning all their products to fit in their cloud strategy. System Center 2012 is a big part of that. You combine that with Windows Server 2012 and you have a very large scale private cloud strategy for organization. Some of the key things to take away as far as the private cloud strategy of Microsoft goes, well, first off, stop thinking of IT as things, as servers and desktops and network switches and those kind of physical items. You want to start thinking about IT as service. And what I mean by this is that instead of when you want to, implement a new Exchange system, you start thinking about the things. Well, I need a server and I need this much RAM and I got to have this much storage and I need this software license. Well, with a private cloud strategy, as far as Microsoft is concerned, you will simply think of the service, the thing you need, the Exchange system, and you'll be able to turn that on, if you will, on demand when you need it. And you can scale it up, scale it down as demands change. So what kind of under the hood improvements am I talking about here? It's nice and all that I mention them, but that doesn't really give us any meat. So let's look at some meat here. Well, there are huge changes coming to Hyper-V, right? This is Microsoft's virtualization technology, and with Hyper-V 3.0, it has finally grown up to become a real challenger in the virtualization marketplace, if you will. It supports things such as live migration without requiring a storage area network. Okay, we've had live migration since Windows Server 2008 R2, but it had very strict requirements before you could use it. We also have Hyper-V Replica, which will give us much greater disaster recovery solutions for small and mid-size organizations, right? Very large organizations have huge high availability systems and SANs and everything else, so they can make their disaster recovery systems much more robust. Well, for small and mid-sized organizations, they're constrained by not only budgetary concerns, but manpower concerns, all of the above. NIC teaming. NIC teaming has been around for a long time and very few people use it. Why is that? It's because it has always required you to have very specific network adapters, and you had to have the exact same network adapter before you could team it. So if you wanted to team 4 network adapters together, okay, Intel is a famous one that supports NIC teaming. You had to have 4 of the exact same Intel adapter. Well, that's fine if you bought the server that way, but if you wanted to add it in after the fact or make it more robust, it could be difficult. Well, in Windows Server 2012, you'll be able to team your NICs together for boosting bandwidth and increasing failover options, and it won't matter what brand or model they are. Take 4 different adapters from 4 different manufacturers, drop them in a server. Okay, as long as you've configured them so the server can see those adapters, you can now team them again together. We also have direct access improvements. right? Direct access is Microsoft's VPN technology that allows people to just connect to your infrastructure from wherever they are without hassle or fanfare. And direct access has been made very simple to install. You'll set it up. You basically send a link, if you will, to your user, and it can configure the profile on their end, and then they'll just connect into the network. PowerShell. PowerShell is part of many, many, many admin improvements that have been designed into Windows Server 2012 and also into Windows 8. PowerShell will now come with IntelliSense. This will make learning PowerShell, for those of us that aren't really well versed into it, far, far easier, right? We'll have automatic drop down when options are available, so you'll see what those options are, which obviously makes discovering them far easier. You should be able to get a view of a dozen or so approximately options at a glance. So that, for people like me with less than stellar memories, will help us not have to try and remember every option we saw as we scroll down a list of 50 options. You'll have icons to help identify the type of option available, and you'll also have syntax tooltips. All these things are designed to make it easier for you to find the PowerShell commandlet you need to do a task. This is very important because PowerShell is part of the common engineering criteria at Microsoft. It is required to be designed in at the core of all their products. So whether it be Windows Server 2012 or Exchange Server, any of their core products will be 100% manageable through PowerShell. As my cohort, Don Jones, is famous for saying in his presentations, we're at this stage where we either learn PowerShell or learn, would you like fries with that? And I've always found that to be funny, but very accurate. It's time to really pay attention and learn PowerShell. We have other admin improvements, such as the AD Recycle Bin with a graphical user interface. You've had the AD Recycle Bin since 2008 R2, right? But it required using PowerShell to take advantage of it. And since admins are still ramping up their PowerShell use, you would find that a lot of organizations that could have benefited from using the AD Recycle Bin weren't taking advantage of it. Well, now it will be much easier because there'll be a GUI front end that drives the PowerShell backend. In addition to that, we have a brand new, completely redesigned server manager. It will be apparent as soon as you look at it that it is moving away from the old MMC, right? We've had the MMC for years now, since Windows 2000, so almost 13 years. We'll be moving away from that to PowerShell-based management. Server Manager will now support server groups. And server groups are a really cool way to manage many at one time. So say you have a server group in Iowa, and it's 12 different servers that run your operations in that state, and you want to apply a very specific configuration to just those 12 servers. Well, instead of logging on remotely to each one, you'll be able to use Server Manager even on your workstation, and we'll get into that in a minute, and put them all in a server group and then issue the command that you want, and it will be executed on all of them. So it will ease administration of logical groupings of servers. I mentioned a minute ago that you'll be able to run Server Manager from your workstation. A lot of admins I know really prefer this. They don't like to log into the server, and I agree with this for security and other reasons. They like to run the admin tools on their own machine and do what they need to do. Well, with the Windows 8 RSAT, which is the Remote Server Administration Toolkit, you will be able to run Server Manager on your machine and manage the servers in your organization, the Windows Server 2012 servers. So you can get the Windows 8 RSAT from Microsoft, and the link will be available if anybody wants it. So how about our interface? Well, everybody by now has probably heard of the Metro interface. And yes, Metro has made its way into our servers. I have discussed this with many admins, and usually their heads drop a little bit and their shoulders droop. It's a tough one, but it's all for the good. If you take a little bit and you get used to it and you see how it's improving things, I think you'll like it. In Windows Server 2012, it's not actually called Metro. It's technically known as the Windows Start screen. I don't know why they need a little different interface, but to confuse us even more, it's important to note that Metro isn't just a thing, it's a design style or language, if you will. Okay, it's known as the Windows Runtime Environment. So the bottom line for me here to give you today is don't get too worked up. It's not that hard to adapt to, and most of what you're looking for will be there. Most Windows Server 2012 Metro tiles simply launch apps on the traditional desktop. So they're Metro tiles for Active Directory users and computers, for instance, but uh, you'll click them and they will launch on the good old traditional desktop that you're used to. Go figure. I guess this is just a way to slowly work us towards getting used to it. Now, from the traditional desktop, it is easy to move to the Metro interface. You simply move your mouse over to the far left bottom corner and click on the Metro thumbnail that pops up. That's all there is to it. So let's move right on from the little intro into Windows Server 2012 and talk about Windows 8 on the desktop. Well, Windows 8, like Windows Server 2012, has more going on than you can imagine, than I can imagine. I'm still taking it all in, right? There's more than we can shake a stick at, as my mom used to say. Well, one way I've found people associate really easy with is the difference between Office 2003 and Office 2007. Remember when we got the ribbon, right? Most people bang their heads against the wall. They hated the thing. Now that they've had a chance to use it, rarely do I cross someone who is using the ribbon that would ever give it up. They love the ribbon. So hopefully it will be the same thing with Windows 8. As they get used to the interface and what it can do, they'll find that it actually improves things. But there are a couple little things that annoy people right from the get-go, and that is that the start button that we've grown to love since Windows 95 is no more. You will not find a start button like you're used to in Windows 8. The functionality is still there through the charms, but you won't have a start menu anymore. And what this also does is it changes basic functions like shutting down the machine into a different process. So you have to learn that new process, right? We're all used to start, shutdown. Well, it isn't start, shutdown anymore. It's a little different process. Now, why are they doing all this? Well, Microsoft, just like their competitor up in Cupertino, is trying to unify the operating system experience. Just 5 years ago, or even going back, 8 or 10 years, we were very used to different products for different purposes. But now, it's almost as we discussed with the private cloud, not just IT departments, organizations are thinking of IT less as things and more as service, but individuals are. We don't want separate phones and tablets and laptops and PCs. We want to get our information, to consume our content or create our content from any device that we have available. What's important to us is that content. We don't care so much about the device anymore. The only reason we have the device is to get that content. So instead of giving us different interfaces across the board, Microsoft is working to give us a common interface that we can use in very similar fashion across all of the products. And Apple has been doing this for years. if you look at the evolution of OS X, they have slowly and methodically been incorporating iOS functionality into their flagship operating system. Let's talk about booting in Windows 8. There is a great discussion from Microsoft on how booting has changed with this operating system. Up until and including Windows 7, when we needed to do something on a computer that was misbehaving, or we wanted to boot from an external device or whatnot, what do all of us do? Well, we tap the F8 key, right? Or one of the other function keys, depending on what we want to do during the BIOS post. Well, that isn't available anymore because modern computers with UEFI BIOSes and Windows 8 boot so fast, there isn't time to interrupt it with a key press. To give you an example, Microsoft took a test laptop, an average current model laptop, but with an SSD, so a solid state drive. It was fully booted, ready to use from power off to Windows desktop, waiting for them to do something in 7 seconds. Okay, that is a great experience. That's more like what people have been asking for as long as I've been on IT, right? It's one of the things that makes the iPad so popular. People press the wake button and it's ready to roll. They, press the suspend button and it goes to sleep. They don't wait on the device. And Windows 8 brings us much closer to that. Well, the problem is we still have scenarios where we need to do those functions that we've been doing all along, such as bringing up the boot menu. Maybe we have a misbehaving system and we need to get into safe mode. Possibly we want to boot from an external drive or a USB device. Whatever the reason is, there are still occasions where we want to be able to do these things. So with Windows 8, the Microsoft team has developed a completely different way of doing this, and they have modified the algorithms that are required so that firing the Windows recovery environment is possible even in scenarios where Windows 8 like boots to a login but then hangs. So in a scenario where the operating system might think, hey, I have booted, but the user is not able to do anything, the algorithms take that into account and will actually reboot you into the recovery environment. And the recovery environment is a completely pristine environment that is untouched so that you can get in there and do what you need to do. Now, controlling your boot options are available a number of ways. You can get to them through the settings charm, which we'll talk about later, the shutdown menu, or even a command line switch, right? There is a shutdown exe command, and if you do shutdown.exe/r/o, that will fire the boot options at the next boot. Now you do have to do the /r for restart. You can't shut the machine off and then power it back on into the boot options or boot environment. Real quick, the boot options ties right in with UEFI BIOSes. And what I mean by that is you can actually go in there and tell it, hey, I want to get into my BIOS and make changes. And Windows will boot you into your BIOS. This is obviously only in modern BIOSes that support this. In legacy BIOSes, they will still behave as you expect them to. But it's this much tighter integration between the BIOS, the firmware that boots the hardware, and the operating system that the user is using to take advantage of the hardware. So let's talk about the interface a bit. We mentioned Metro a little bit in our Windows Server 2012 conversation, but I want to get in a little bit more detail here as we talk about it for Windows 8 on the desktop. First off, Metro is about content before Chrome. And what they mean by this expression is they want you to focus on, making sure you have a good, powerful engine before you worry about waxing the car. So what is our engine? Our engine is our data. And they want the Metro interface to concern itself more with giving you your data and getting you closer to your data than giving you all the options that you need. And so what it does is it brings the user closer to the application's data. It's one way I like to describe it is it's about doing things and seeing things. So the interface not only lets you do things like launch an application or change something, but it also allows you to consume content through it without interacting. It is a fairly flat and modular user interface, right? This is one of the reasons that the arrow interface that became so famous with Vista and then in Windows 7 is now gone, right? Windows 8 does not have arrow. But the idea is that less is more, okay? And only the most relevant elements should be on your screen at any time. That when I say that, people always like want to throw things at me. So I've developed kind of an example that I think describes it better. And say we have an app that's designed to allow us to watch TV streaming from the net, right? We have our favorite TV show. We get a half hour a week where we're not working or running around the kids to watch this show, and we want to watch it. Well, the app itself has many menus and buttons that you use for navigating content, for changing preferences, setting your volume, whatever it is. The thing is, when you're watching that TV stream, when you're enjoying your show, you don't want to see all that stuff. You want to see your show, okay? And you've been able to do that in apps like Media Player by clicking the full screen button and then moving the mouse and letting it pause and things disappear. But Metro is about giving you that by default, not making you take extra action to get it. Because really, you want your content first, and then when you want to go do those things like change your preferences, which are less frequent, then the Chrome fires in and it's still there and you're able to do it. So Metro is therefore both a launchpad and a dashboard, right? You can launch apps from it, but you can also use it to display content and see content. And now that brings us to live tiles. What are live tiles? Well, live tiles are big icons, basically, that everybody has seen in the screenshots of Windows 8. But they are so much more than an icon. They change the conventional icon, which is just a picture that has some instruction that goes and launches an executable or whatnot, into an actual content delivery method. So that tile is now presenting you information without you doing anything. This really brings Metro icons to life. Okay, the way that Microsoft describes live tiles they are a data-driven notification platform, which means the data itself drives them to change. And I'll get into a minute, because most people think, okay, well, this is really going to slow my computer down because these tiles are going and they're asking, do you have new data? Do you have new data? Well, that would be a polling method. And Microsoft realized that would crush the user experience, right? If we had 100 live tiles going on, our machine would be sluggish before we even started. So that was a big no-no. Instead, they developed a push-based system where the data drives the tile. And this is tricky to think of how this does this, but it uses the Windows push notification service, which is this whole new service and set of data center resources, if you will, that Microsoft has deployed that allow content from somewhere, and this is all XML based, to notify them that, hey, there's a change, and then they notify that system on your computer, on your Windows 8 computer, again, using the Windows push notification service, which then tells the app, hey, I have new info for you. When you're ready, let me know. Here it is. What it really does is it allows the app's data to shine through to the tile and be updated frequently to keep things fresh. A great example is the weather app, right? The weather app displays the current temperature. Well, in a old school app, you're going to need to, double click the weather app. It opens up, it then goes out and retrieves the weather, and now it displays it to you. Well, again, all I wanted to know was the weather. I didn't want to take 5 steps to get there. So this allows it to shine through without me doing anything and stay relevant, because the weather at 4 in the morning is probably not the same as at 3 in the afternoon. Now, a lot of people say, well, I had a Windows gadget that did that. Windows gadgets and Windows 8 Live Tiles are completely different systems. Other than the fact that they look similar, they seem to be similar, they are not. So please don't confuse them. And in fact, Microsoft a few weeks ago released an advisory that told people that are using Windows 7 gadgets to just turn them off. The reason for that is they found a security flaw, but because they're so into Live Tiles and Windows 8, it appears that their solution to the security flaw isn't to redevelop gadgets or that, it's to just turn them off, because pretty soon you'll have Windows 8 and Live Tiles and they don't have the problem. That's just my, hypothesis. But another thing about Live Tiles, they're very efficient. Like I said, Microsoft realized that if we had these apps consuming memory, running as processes in the background, it would crush the user experience. It would turn it into something that nobody would want. And so they have designed these to be very efficient. Literally, they're designed to allow you to have hundreds of Live Tiles with no noticeable performance hit. That's something. Okay, how about charms? You got to love the name charms, and it literally comes from what you think it comes from, which is a charm bracelet. At least this is what I've been told. And because if you think about a charm bracelet, each charm on that bracelet represents something meaningful, something important, and that is what each thing on the charms bar, as it's sometimes called, represents. Think of charms as the new start menu, if you will. You'll find a lot of your old start functionality there somewhere. For instance, when you want to shut down, you fire the charms, go into the settings app, go down to power, and that's where you find shutdown. You can also fire the charms and launch the traditional desktop, okay, and it will appear there as start. From the charms menu, you have access to search, and the search in Windows 8 is better than ever before. They're finally getting search right. We're able to search without destroying our user experience. Our computer doesn't slow down. We don't have to index everything in the world. So it's a great functionality in Windows 8. The charms bar is the universal toolbar in Windows 8. What I mean by that is it's available from both the Metro and the traditional desktop interface. So it doesn't matter if you're in that traditional desktop view where you have icons on the screen and you're thinking, wow, this is kind of like Windows 7. You still have the charms bar available if you want to pull it out, and it gives you an easy way to fire off things like settings or search no matter where you are. It consolidates those system level capabilities that I just talked about, like settings and shutdown, with often needed features like search. So it puts them together in a logical place. Now, a lot of people are fired up about the Metro and the charms, but really when you think about the start menu that we've been using for the last 12 years, it's pretty flat and disorganized. If you have hundreds of apps, you click start, and then you go into all programs, and now you have these huge list of folders of all your different programs, and then in those folders you might have lists of folders, and inside those subfolders you have lists of programs, and it can get very cumbersome to move around. So the Metro interface and its charms are designed to ease that experience, to make it more logical and easier of a flow to work through. I've already mentioned that you can invoke the charms from both interfaces, but let me give you a quick explanation, if you will, of how you'll do that. Well, if you have a touch interface, okay, which everybody thinks Metro is about touch, and it is, and we're going to get into that in more in a minute, but it is not designed to supplant the keyboard and mouse. So if you do have a touch interface, you'll simply take your finger and swipe towards the left from the right edge, and the charms menu will swipe out with you and you'll see it there. Okay. If you don't have a touch interface, if you have a mouse and keyboard, you can get it through what are called hot corners, right? And they're in the upper or lower right. You just move the mouse to those extremes and the charms bar will pop out and you'll be able to go down to it. Or if you are a keyboard shortcut guy like I am, just hit your Windows key and the letter C, C for charms, at the same time, and the charms will flash out in front of you. You'll be good to go. So what about all these gestures? Remember, I just brought up the topic of the touch interface. Well, gestures are a key component of Windows 8 designed for interacting with Metro applications, with the Metro interface in particular, the live tiles and such. There's a number of them. I'll get into those in a minute. But as I mentioned, Microsoft fully acknowledges that although touch interfaces are gaining in popularity, right? We have, over 90 million iPads running around, not to mention all of our phones and everything else. It's gaining in popularity, but it hasn't supplanted the keyboard and mouse. So we can't say, hey, your desktop operating system, you're no longer allowed to use this old stuff. Just, buy a touch monitor and that's what you need to use from now on. They're not doing that in any way. Okay, the touch interface in Windows 8 is designed to become an extension, an enhancement, to give you a more current way of interacting with your system in addition to the conventional ways. So what are these gestures? Well, the list is growing, but the basic list includes press and hold, which obviously is you tap on something and hold your finger there. And what does that do? Well, that displays detailed information for you. So think tooltip or context menu, right? Think right click, if you will. We have tap, and tap, all it does is fires the primary action of whatever you're tapping. So if you're tapping a application, it launches the application. Okay. If you're tapping a file, it opens the file. So it fires whatever the primary action that has been associated with what you're tapping is. Slide. What is slide? Slide is the means by which we pan or drag an item after we've selected it. So we want to move a tile to a different location on our screen. We use slide functionality. Swipe. Swipe is a big one because it encompasses so much more than just a single thing. So in a nutshell, swipe allows us to select, command, and move whatever it is we're working with. So if we swipe down, well, what happens when we swipe down? If we swipe down just a little bit, it selects the object. If we swipe down a lot, it releases the object for movement. So you have that tile that you want to move. When you swipe it a little bit, it selects it. When you swipe it more, it releases it so that you can now use slide to move it around your screen to wherever you want. We have swipe from the right edge. I've already mentioned that displays your Metro charms. But how about if we swipe from the left edge? Well, that switches to the previously used app. So if you were in Internet Explorer and then you went into Word, when you swipe from the left, you'll go from Word back to Internet Explorer. If you swipe from the top or the bottom, this is how you will pull up the app-specific charms. So if you're in XYZ application and it has, the developer has designed in, specific charms to access different functionality, well, you'll get those charms by swiping from the top or the bottom, middle of the screen. Pinch and stretch. Okay, this one most people are familiar with because they've gotten used to using it on their phones. It activates your optical zoom. But in addition to the optical zoom, it does something very unique that is new in Windows 8, and that is it fires semantic zoom. This is a cool one. I really like semantic zoom. What semantic zoom does is it allows a control, say a live tile, right, to present two different views of information. So, for instance, I have an app that tells me all the upcoming concerts in my local theater for the next 6 months, right? So, well, when I'm zoomed out on that live tile from my concert app, it shows me, let's say, 6 or 8 concerts, their name and their date. Well, if I use pinch and stretch to fire off semantic zoom, it actually zooms in that app on a particular concert and shows me details about it. So now not only do I see that concert name and date, I see, you know, how many seats are available, ticket cost, whatever it is. So semantic zoom gives you a way to see two different pieces of data without having to fire an app and sort through and do all the things we're used to doing. It's a great new feature and one I think that a lot of people are really going to like. Finally, we have turn. And this is simply allows you to rotate an object. So if you had a photo and you were trying to move it from portrait to landscape, you would use turn. Another real quick thing about gestures, Microsoft has designed them such that they support more than a single finger or 2 fingers or 3 fingers. They can support any number of fingers at any time depending on what the developer wants. So that brings us to touch hardware. And I'm not talking about touch hardware tablets. I'm talking about touch hardware to interact with your desktops, with your normal PCs, because it is out there. Matter of fact, Microsoft this week, I believe, has made some new announcements about their Bluetooth mice and keyboards. Okay, they have actually updated and designed their mice and keyboard offerings. They have 3 different lines actually that are all optimized for touch. And this is pretty cool stuff because it will change what your mouse and keyboard does for you. We all think about our mouse as allowing us to move side to side or up and down on our keyboard. We use the buttons that are on it to fire off the context menu. We use the roller to scroll up and down on an app, but it's all pretty much fixed. Well, with the new touch mice and keyboards, you'll be able to support a lot of multi-directional touch scrolling and gestures right from the mouse. So you have a desktop and you want to take advantage of, swipe from the right edge to get in, or you want to take advantage of, a better example would be the semantic zoom. You can actually pinch and zoom on the top of that touch mouse and away you go. So it's a logical extension of the operating system design out into the real world and the interfaces we'll use to interact with it. Really think of it as Microsoft's first take on the Apple Magic Mouse. So if anybody is familiar with that, if anybody here uses Macs or supports them, Apple has this Magic Mouse, which is a nifty little device that lets them support all their multitasking gestures when they use OS X. Now, getting into the features that are coming with the Windows 8 desktop. Well, we have a number of them. We have refresh and reset, which is better than a backup, but much less painful than a reinstall. We have Windows 8 Hyper-V on the client. This is awesome. Okay, many of you will remember the old Virtual PC product. This is much, much better. This is true Hyper-V, but on the client side. So you can virtualize many operating systems right on a single piece of hardware, but it doesn't have to be this great big server, and it doesn't have to run Windows Server 2008 R2 or better, all those things. In fact, I have seen Windows 8 desktop PCs running Windows Server 2012, Windows 7, Windows XP, and even Linux. In fact, I've built them, so it's a great extension. Storage spaces. This is an about time thing as far as I'm concerned. Storage has been growing, and the more our storage capacity grows, the more our users use it. which isn't necessarily a good thing, right? Just because you have a bigger house doesn't mean you fill it with more junk. But in many cases, it's not junk, it's valuable stuff as far as what's being stored. Our photos are at higher resolution now, so they take more storage space, whatever. Well, managing that storage has become kind of a pain. You have dozens of different hard drives attached, right, in some form that you have different things stored on. Well, and then you're trying to remember, which drive did I put this on, what volume, whatever. Well, with storage spaces, you can combine that big bunch of drives into kind of a single big virtual drive that then you can use as a singular thing instead of a mini thing. File history. File history is also a about time moment for me. And I love it. Windows backup has been in Windows for as long as I can remember. And that said, statistically, I think less than 5% of people use it. Think about that. Windows represents the lion's share of desktop and server environments, and yet less than 5% of those people actually use this feature. That tells me something's wrong. Well, one of the things that's wrong is that the way it works and what it does. File history answers some of that because it provides real-time protection of your data. You really don't have to do anything. Once it's on, it's on. It protects it to an external drive or even to the cloud via SkyDrive. And now I said some. It's because it only protects very specific data. You can't pick everything on your drive and say, use file history for this. It protects by default, all the user data, your photos and documents and music, along with some other important files and folders on your system. But a real cool feature it adds, finally, is version control. It not only backs up your files when you make changes to them, but it keeps revisions. So you realize that, oh man, I deleted that line out of my document and I need it back and I can't remember exactly what it said. Well, you can go back to a version of the file previous to when you made the change and file history will bring it back for you. It's really cool and worth checking out. Now I'm going to rush through these next ones a little bit so that we can get some Q&A time here in the next few minutes. I wanted to mention to you, let's get to our printing. Printing is brand new in Windows 8. It's completely redesigned from the bottom up and worth noting. Now, I'm not going to go through these bullet points because I want to get on to some of the cooler stuff, but this slide deck will be available for you. A little bit about cost. This is one I wanted to share with you because a lot of people didn't know this, and it's really cool, but it's kind of a window of opportunity, at least as far as what we know right now. If you currently use Windows XP, Vista, or Windows 7, you will get a Windows 8 upgrade for 40 bucks. Right? That's way cheaper than what everybody expected to have to pay. People were expecting to pay $99 or $199. You'll be able to get it for $39.99. And Windows Media Center, which you use to play DVDs or watch TV, and a lot of people have grown fond of, is no longer provided for free with the operating system. You have to add it as a feature. And it was designed by Microsoft to cost. So it was a paid upgrade. A lot of people were fired up about this. Well, if you buy that $39.99 upgrade, you will get Windows Media Center for free when you upgrade. How about if you just bought a Windows 7 PC or you buy one in October because you don't feel like waiting for the actual launch, or October's probably a bad example. How about August? Anyways, you just bought a Windows 7 PC. Anybody that buys a Windows 7 PC from now until January 31st, 2013 gets a free upgrade to Windows 8. Or I shouldn't say free, it will cost you, but it costs you $14.99. And the reason I said free was because a lot of OEMs, say you buy a Dell, will be offering to subsidize that cost. They'll be providing you with the upgrade free of charge. Tablets. You know, a lot of people say, oh, tablets are a fad. They're not coming into our organization. Well, naysayers are all over, but the data is quite clear. Over 80% of the Fortune 100 have tablets implemented. So that's 80 of the 100 largest companies in the world, and they're implementing tablets. You know, Microsoft or Apple has gone from being a company in distress just a few years back to the largest company in the world, and they've done it a lot on the strength of 90 million Apple iPads sold in 2 years, right? It's been out since 2010, and they've already sold over 90 million of these things. So good, bad, or indifferent, these things are out there and they're coming, and Microsoft realizes that. So they are really bringing their A game to play in this market. Well, why would you want a Windows 8 tablet as opposed to an iPad or an Android tablet or even a RIM playbook? Well, you have a number of different reasons, and you can see many of them. I'll just point out a couple quick ones. AD integration in multiple accounts, those are game changers as far as I'm concerned. And I obviously write and speak a lot about the iPad. Well, this is a clear differentiator because as it stands now in the iOS, an iPad can't be customized to provide a unique experience for different users, right? Windows 8 can. Enough said. Um, Office. Yes, Microsoft is saying that they will be releasing a Office for iPad soon. What do you want to bet that it isn't until after they launch the Windows 8 tablets that have Windows Office or Microsoft Office available? So it will come with Windows 8 tablets, or as far as availability is concerned. So how about Windows RT? What is Windows RT? Windows RT is a version of Windows 8 for ARM-based devices. ARM processors currently power a large percentage of the mobile devices that are out there and some of the hottest ones. They're very fast, they're efficient, and they consume very low power, which makes them well suited to the mobile environment. Problem here is that uh, Windows RT or Windows on an ARM device cannot run any Windows app that wasn't designed specifically for it. So if you have an old Windows 7 app or Windows XP app or whatever it is, it will not run on Windows RT unless it has been rewritten to do so by the developer. I will tell you that it looks like at least one non-Microsoft tablet is set to launch. A Windows RT-based tablet is set to launch with Windows 8 in the October timeframe. And it's looking like it will be from Samsung. And of course, Samsung is a big Windows partner with Microsoft. Surface. I am a fan of Surface. What is Surface? Well, Surface is Microsoft's first internally designed and built tablet, meaning they control everything, just like Apple does with the iPad. Does this mean that they're trying to supplant or, you know, supersede their partners that are designing non-Microsoft tablets? No, not at all. Matter of fact, Steve Ballmer says that Surface is just designed to fill a niche that isn't filled by those other vendors. Now, I will tell you that this is not the little known Microsoft Research Surface product from a few years back. That thing was the size of a coffee table and weighed about as much as a compact car. If you don't believe me, Google it up. It's pretty interesting. It was really cool at the time, but it's not what I'm talking about here. You will, of course, have two flavors of Surface. You'll have Surface RT, which runs Windows RT and will be ARM-based, and you'll have Surface Pro. The cool thing about Surface Pro is it's actually running Windows 8 Professional, so it should run full versions of apps instead of mobile optimized ones. Anything you can run on your desktop, you should be able to run on Surface Pro, as long as, you know, the hardware requirements meet the expectations of the app. That really gives you a full computing experience because it also has peripheral support for printing or scanning, whatever it is you have to do. Surface will have something, again, that sets it kind of apart from the iPad. It will have expansion ports, including SD and USB 2.0, or micro SD and USB 2.0 on the RT model, and literally micro SD XC and USB 3.0 on Surface Pro. Pretty cool. Well, how about Office again? If you use Office, Surface is for you because it will also use Office. In fact, Surface RT will come with a version of Office on it. IT pros, if they haven't been enjoying the tablet movement, but they're finally forced into it because their boss, tells them you'll do this or you'll go the way of the dodo. Well, at least with Surface, you'll be able to use tools that are compelling and familiar to you, like System Center or Group Policy. That's a big one. And a couple of little aesthetic things. It has a built-in kickstand, which is nice when you want to watch movies or video conference. And it has two different keyboard covers right out of the gate. One that provides a full keyboard tactile experience and one that is very smooth and provides more of a virtual keyboard type experience. The Windows Store is how you will get your apps, just like Google's Play Marketplace and Apple's App Store. They're moving to that same kind of model. And again, this Unity thing comes about because you'll use the App Store from your Windows desktop just as well as your Windows tablet or your Windows phone. We really didn't get into the Windows Phone today, but Windows 8 phones should release in October also. So a few parting shots here, and then we'll move on to a little bit of Q&A. First off, don't forget that message about Unity. Windows 8 is all about strengthening and unifying the systems in your organization or in your life, whether they be a phone, a tablet, desktop, or server, it doesn't matter. Windows 8 is designed to bring them together and give you a common experience. Now is the time to test. If you're thinking Windows 8 might fit in your organization or your life, why not go give it a test? It doesn't cost you anything to do it. The release preview is still there, and the release preview is pretty much the last public preview version before the product is released. I've put the link up there for you if you want to go grab it. And Windows 2012 server, okay, it's going to be available to you at that link. You can get an ISO or a ready to run VHD. So you download the VHD, fire it up in Hyper-V on your Windows 8 desktop, and you now have a Windows server. Many organizations have very unique systems. In fact, I would dare say that almost all organizations have a plethora of unique systems running around. It takes a while to test anything, especially a new operating system, to see basically how well it's going to play in the sandbox. There's a lot of kids in our sandbox. We want to make sure that they all behave and they all play well with one another. So the earlier we start testing, the earlier we'll be able to implement with confidence that we won't be causing more grief than we will success. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that I gave you some things to think about and some interesting insights into Windows 8 and what it'll mean. If you're so inclined, please follow me on Twitter. I'm constantly putting out tips, tricks, insights, anything I find, whether it be on Windows 8 or Windows Server or mobility. I do a lot of mobility, so iPads, iPhones, Android, whatever. You can keep an eye at petri.co.il for my articles. Every week I am putting out a new article on how to, as well as some opinion articles on up and coming things. The final thing that's really important to me is please complete your surveys. Let us know how I did. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, I want to know. I can't get better at delivering you the message and the content that you want to see unless I hear everything I did right as well as everything I didn't do quite so right. Other than that, have an awesome day and let's get into the Q&A. So I'm looking through here to see my questions here. Oh, so Vinny asked about a pro version and will there be different flavors? Yes, there will be different flavors, although as of last count, Windows 8, I believe there's 4 flavors. So don't quote me on that, but there are different versions. I have a question about the new boot options. I'm concerned about the new alternative boot method, safe mode, command line only, etc. Currently, I have a computer that only boots in the safe mode. It's not possible to start it and then log on with some user account. If Windows 8 demands a user to log in prior to selecting an alternative boot mode, how could this issue be managed? That's an excellent question. And one, let me clear up. That's where those algorithms that we talked about come in. If Windows 8 detects that, hey, it thinks that it has booted correctly, but nobody has logged in, it will automatically fire the boot options menu. So you do not have to log in and tell it to go into the boot options menu. It will fire that automatically when it senses that it can't be booted correctly. And now, just in case, you've reset it 3 times without logging in for whatever reason, the kid bumped the button when you weren't paying attention, hit the power cord, whatever. It does give you the option when it fires the boot options to say, hey, everything's okay, just continue on normally, and you can go there. But you do not need to log in before you can actually get into the boot options. Let's find. How is file history different from shadow copies? Well, it's very similar. But one of the big differences is it's very, very easy and straightforward. So easy and straightforward, in fact, that it's designed for any user, not just IT users, to be able to turn it on and use it. And the restore process is very intuitive, whereas implementing shadow copies is not quite there. I have a great question on how will mobile profiles be protected in a business environment. I hear you can use a thumb drive or online sign-in to bring your settings into Windows 8. That could be a security risk in a professional environment. Absolutely, and you'll have with Windows to Go and BitLocker to Go, you can enforce encryption and move Windows onto a flash drive, that kind of thing, but you can control that as an IT administrator, right? You can use group policy to turn off the ability or modify it to fit your environment's security policies and principles. So really what I recommend as always is you look at what the functionality is, you look at what fits for you, and then go look at group policy for one, as well as other admin tools to bring the functionality in to match what your requirements are. Because absolutely, if you're in an organization where having somebody come in and be able to boot a computer with their version of Windows, if you will, and I'm making my little finger quote thing here, that could be a problem. Well, in that case, you want to be able to turn off that ability, and you will be able to do that at an administrative level.
All right, that's all the time we have today. Thanks again, everyone, for attending and for your participation. As a reminder, today's webinar was recorded and will be available to view at trainsignal.com/blog/webinars. We will also email you the link by the end of this week. And remember, as you leave, please fill out the survey for a chance to win a copy of Windows 7 Ultimate. We will email the winner by the end of this week. Thanks again, and have a great day.